Hey everyone, welcome back to Amped and Unapologetic, and thank you for joining me for episode 2. In episode 1, we broke down Peter Thiel, the billionaire architect shaping American politics from the shadows. Today, we shift to someone who stepped out from those shadows and into the spotlight. James David Hamill. Most of you know him as JD Vance. The man built, funded, shaped, and accelerated by the very network we talked about in episode 1. And let me tell you why this episode matters, why he matters, especially right now. We're looking at a vice president with one of the most fastest rises in modern political history. Someone who spent less than 2 years in the Senate. Someone handpicked by billionaire power brokers. Someone positioned to take over the Oval Office much sooner than most Americans realize, let alone want. And with Trump's very visible cognitive decline, multiple MRIs, visible bruising of his hand, sundowning, etc., along with his age, we would be ignorant to pretend the possibility is far away. So today isn't just a biography, it's a breakdown of how someone goes from a memoirist to Silicon Valley groom to MAGA mouthpiece to the second most powerful person in the United States of America. Do not be fooled. This is not organic. It's certainly not grassroots. This is, in fact, engineered and extremely dangerous for our nation. So let's break this down. Who was JD Vance before the machine found him? We'll briefly start at the beginning because his early life does matter. Vance's early life isn't just part of his story. His early life matters as it becomes the product Peter Thiel purchased. It becomes the product powerful people later invest in. JD Vance was born in 1984 in Middleton, Ohio, a Rust Belt town hit hard by the collapse of American manufacturing. His childhood was chaotic. His mother, she struggled deeply with addiction. His father was not in the picture. He bounced between homes. The environment was unstable and sometimes, sadly, violent. He was primarily raised by his grandparents, tough Appalachian transplants who brought their Kentucky grit with them. This was not a quiet, comfortable childhood by any means. This was survival. And I want to be clear here. I'm not judging or diminishing any of that. Trauma is real. I can certainly empathize with that. That instability truly does shape people, good or bad. But here's a key point. Years later, Vance would use this upbringing as a political identity. He used it as a brand, and billionaires would see enormous value in it. Because in politics, a compelling personal story can be just as useful as money. After high school, Vance joined the Marines. He served as a combat correspondent, not infantry, essentially a military journalist. Still important, still formative, but not frontline combat the way most people sometimes assume or he makes it appear. The Marines gave him discipline, structure, and a narrative he'd later rely on heavily. After returning home, he attended Ohio State University. He excelled academically, and then something huge happened. He was accepted into Yale Law School, one of the most elite institutions in the world. This is where JD Vance steps out of the world he grew up in and straight into the world of power. At Yale, he meets elite scholars. He networks with the children of America's most powerful families. He is mentored by Amy Chua, author of Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother, and she introduces him to Tina Bennett, a major literary agent. This matters because it's Yale, not the Rust Belt, that launches JD Vance into national visibility. Yale is where he learns how to package his story. Yale is where he meets people who reshape him. And Yale is where the most important connection of all begins. The bridge into Peter Thiel's world. But before that happens, something else changes his life. Hillbilly Elegy, the book that became a political weapon. Hillbilly Elegy was emotional, personal, honest, and absolutely not written as a political strategy. It wasn't crafted by the far right wing machine. It wasn't funded by billionaires. It wasn't designed to support MAGA. It was a memoir, full stop. Amy Chua encouraged him to write it, Tina Bennett helped shape it, and HarperCollins published it. a mainstream outlet, not a political organization. But here's what changed everything. The media turned the book into the Explain Trump Voters Manual, and suddenly, JD Vance was booked on every talk show. His analysis of white working class decline was in every publication. Liberals, conservatives, centrists, everyone was talking about him. He became the voice of Appalachian struggle. He became the translator between elite America and struggling America. And that is when the political world noticed him. Most importantly, this is when Peter Thiel noticed him. And that's where we're headed next. The moment everything changes. So let's pick up back at Yale, because this is the hinge moment. This is where JD Vance's story stops being about upbringing and personal struggle and starts becoming a project. Back in 2011, Peter Thiel traveled to Yale to give a talk on technology, contrarian thinking, the future of America, and the idea that democracy is fundamentally flawed. JD Vance was in the audience, and after the talk, Vance reached out to Thiel. Now, why does this matter? Because Thiel doesn't just respond to everybody. He's a billionaire with razor-sharp interest. He invests in people the same way he invests in startups. He looks for potential to shape. He looks for flexibility in ideas. He looks for a compelling origin story that he can weaponize later. He looks for someone young enough to mold. JD Vance checked every one of those boxes. They stayed in touch. They talked. They connected intellectually. This wasn't, oh, cool, we met, nice to meet you. This was the beginning of a relationship that would shape the rest of Vance's life and the political future of our nation. Thiel's assessment of why Vance was a perfect recruit, let's be blunt here. Thiel didn't pick Vance out of empathy. He picked him because he was useful. JD Vance had a trauma to success story, deep Rust Belt appeal, elite polish from Yale, the ability to speak both language, meaning working class and academics, discipline from the Marines, a calm, articulate demeanor, a best-selling memoir, and most importantly, Thiel knew he could shape his way of thinking. Vance wasn't rigid. He wasn't fixed. He was moldable. To a political engineer like Peter Thiel, that's gold. And after Hillbilly Elegy went mainstream, Vance became a brand, a voice of forgotten America, a media favorite, a bridge between Silicon Valley and middle America. Thiel didn't just see a person, he saw a pipeline. After Yale, Vance didn't stay in law, he didn't go back to the Rust Belt, and he certainly didn't dive into activism or community work. He went straight into venture capital, the world of billionaires, of founders, and elite networks. And make no mistake, this didn't happen because Vance had tech experience, because he didn't. This happened because Peter Thiel opened the door, plain and simple, nothing else. Vance worked at Mithra Capital, a part of Thiel's orbit, and later co-founded Naira Capital in 2019. Let's talk about Naira Capital. Naira wasn't just a fund. It was funded by Peter Thiel, Mark Anderson, another tech billionaire, Eric Schmidt, former Google CEO, and other ultra-wealthy Silicon Valley power players. This is the who's who of elite influence. Now, did Vance suddenly become a tech genius? Absolutely not. Silicon Valley grooming isn't about teaching someone code. It's about giving them legitimacy, surrounding them with power, polishing their public image, weaving them into the elite ecosystems, and prepping them for a political future. This is exactly what happened. Do not be fooled. Thiel and his network were building Vance's credibility long before Vance ever ran for office. This wasn't mentorship. It was flat out positioning. Now we're going to talk about the political rebrand from Trump Hitler's comment to MAGA warrior. Now this part shows how strategic the transformation really was. Before running for office, JD Vance was loudly anti-Trump. I mean, loudly anti-Trump. Publicly criticized MAGA, calling Trump America's Hitler. That's a direct quote from Vance. Calling Trump voters manipulated, calling Trump an idiot, saying he didn't trust Trump with power. This was who JD Vance was, and it was on record everywhere. But when Thiel and the conservative donor class began positioning Vance for office, everything changed. All of a sudden, Trump was no longer dangerous. He was a true leader. MAGA wasn't extreme. They're now patriotic. The voters he once criticized became his people. And Vance reinvented himself into one of the movement's most aggressive voices. This was strategic reconstruction. And who orchestrated this transformation? That's right, Peter Thiel and his network. Now we're going to get into the part that changed everything. In 2021, Ohio Senator Rob Portman announced his retirement, and immediately, Peter Thiel made his move. He donated $10 million to a single super PAC called Protect Ohio Values. This PAC didn't already exist. This PAC was created solely to support JD Vance. That $10 million was historic. It was record-breaking. It was the largest single donor injected to a Senate campaign at the time. And later, Thiel added another $5 million, $15 million to back JD Vance. This wasn't support. This was ownership of Vance's political infrastructure. Most of the ads, outreach, ground game, messaging, rebranding, and voter targeting that boosted Vance in Ohio, that was all Thiel-backed super PAC. And here's the wild part. Thiel personally flew Vance to Mar-a-Lago to mend his relationship with Trump. Vance apologized, Thiel vouched for him, and then, of course, Trump endorses him. And that endorsement was 100% engineered by Thiel, and the only reason Vance won that primary. He wasn't chosen by Ohio. He was chosen by billionaires. Now let's talk about the Senate, a stepping stone, not a career. We'll get into what happened once JD Vance actually got elected, because this is where you really see how intentional this entire story is. Vance enters the Senate in January of 2023, and from day one, it was obvious. He wasn't there to legislate. He wasn't there to learn the ropes. He wasn't there to build seniority or become a long-term senator. He was there to perform. His Senate was short, light on actual legislation, heavy on interviews, heavy on culture war messaging, heavy on building a national brand, and laser focused on appealing to the Trump base. This wasn't a senator preparing for a 20-year political career. This was a politician being groomed for national power. And that's why his time in the Senate feels empty. He wasn't writing laws. He was shaping a persona. Because the plan wasn't to keep him in Congress. The plan was always the White House. Let's talk about the leap that shocked everyone except for the people who engineered it. Vance becoming vice president in 2025. It wasn't about experience, policy, expertise, qualifications, foreign policy knowledge, or even popularity. Certainly not popularity. It was about utility. And he was useful in three major ways. One, he was loyal to Trump in public and loyal to billionaires in private. Thiel, Musk, conservative mega donors. They trusted him. They did not trust Trump. He has a story to sell. Working class, trauma to success, white, Midwestern appeal. It's emotional currency. Number three, he's young, which means decades of influence. He can and will outlast Trump. He can carry out long-term far-right ideologies. JD Vance wasn't chosen to balance a ticket. He wasn't chosen to unify anything. He was chosen because he's a long game, and that should scare everyone paying attention. Because of Trump's health decline, and as doctors have noted, Trump might leave this earth sooner than later. That means JD Vance becomes president immediately. No guardrails, no filter, no moderation. A 40-year-old, billionaire-backed, far-right advocate becomes the executive power of the United States of America. That's not an accident, it's a strategy. Why did billionaires want him? Let's be blunt. Vance is the prototype of what Silicon Valley oligarchs want in a political vessel. Here's why. He's controllable, not emotionally reactive, not impulsive, not unpredictable. He carries a powerful narrative. Poor kid makes it out. Is politically valuable. It gives him authenticity he didn't earn through policy. He inherited it through storytelling. He has elite polish. He speaks like a Yale graduate. He argues like a trained lawyer. He communicates like someone built for TV. He believes in Thiel's vision of post-democratic America. Centralized power, strongman governance, technocratic control, surveillance masked as security, the merging of tech and state, and most importantly, he will defend the interest of the people who put him there. This is why billionaires saw him as a perfect investment. He can sell authoritarianism with a calm voice. He can package extreme ideology as common sense. He can push the most anti-democratic policies without sounding unhinged. He is the PR-friendly face of something much darker. The real danger, what a Vance presidency means. Let's cut straight through the noise. A Vance presidency, especially one that begins replacing Trump, would be one of the most radical power shifts in American history. Here's what will immediately be put at risk. And we'll start with women's rights. This man has supported national abortion bans, defended forcing women to stay in violent marriages, aligned himself with Christian nationalist groups, praised policies rooted in religious control over women's bodies. Under President Vance, women would experience nationwide reproductive restrictions, aka abortion ban, state surveillance of pregnancies, criminalization of medical decisions, and a judicial system that aligns with extreme ideology. This is not hypothetical. This is his record, and it's happening now, backed by him as the vice president. LGBTQ rights. Vance has repeatedly aligned with anti-trans legislation, anti-marriage equality movements, Christian nationalist doctrine that frames LGBTQ people as a cultural decline. A Vance presidency would embolden conversion therapy networks, federal anti-trans policies, attacks on LGBTQ healthcare, and the erasure of LGBTQ protections in school and workplaces. That is scary. Again, this is not speculation. It's the movement he's already attached to, and it's beyond dangerous. Black and brown communities. Under Vance, we could see expanded ICE powers, harsher policing laws, surveillance programs molded after Palantir, voter suppression, the dismantling of civil rights protections, militarized borders, criminalizing migrants, amplified white nationalist movements. We're already watching Black and brown people suffer under this current system. A Vance presidency accelerates all of it. The surveillance state. Remember, this is a man directly shaped by Thiel, the founder of Palantir. A Vance presidency would advance government tech fusion, predictive policing, mass data collection. They're already doing that now. Algorithmic control, AI-driven surveillance, political monitoring under the guise of security. This is how you erode freedom without firing a single shot. And this is a point I need everyone listening to understand. This is not about politics. This isn't even about left or right. This is about human rights. This is about women's rights, about LGBTQ rights. It's about your rights to exist without being watched, to exist without being tracked or controlled or punished. It's about your freedoms. MAGA, you included. It starts with Black and brown communities, then women, then LGBTQ. And you can bet it will affect every single one of us. Whether you want to believe that or not, it will affect every single one of us. A Vance presidency isn't a prediction. It's a pipeline already built. Your voice matters because their entire strategy depends on you staying quiet. So listen, I'm going to close this episode out, but I want you to sit with one question. If JD Vance becomes president, backed by billionaires, enabled by tech surveillance, and shaped by Christian nationalism, what happens to a nation that's already on fire? We don't need to speculate widely to see what's coming. When you look at who backed JD Vance, how quickly he rose, and what he's already aligned himself with, it tells us everything we need to know about the direction certain powerful interests want this country to move in. We're gonna keep unpacking that piece by piece as the story continues to unfold. So until next time, stay aware, stay engaged, and most importantly, always, I mean always, stay loud. See you soon.